Hello everyone. Welcome to the CIS Support Team webinar. I'm Anna Nolstor and I'm joined today by Sam Cox, Gordon Dooley and Dave Anstey. Today we're going to be showing you a new import process or workflow which we call guided import. And this process forms part of a larger package of CRS development work aimed at simplifying certain key functions or tasks for users to perform in the CRS. As we all know, the CRS is an incredibly powerful tool that supports many functions, tasks and activities. But with that comes some potential downside that it can be a bit overwhelming and confusing for users who are not necessarily requiring some of its more complex or sophisticated options. And so that's why after some community consultation, we've started this program of work to create some simplified workflows or routines for some of the key activities. And importing records is obviously one of those key activities. So we're going to structure the webinar like this. We'll start with a detailed demo of the new guided import. And we're going to go through this really slowly, describing each step and what's happening. So please do feel free to stop us at any point with any questions during this first demo. And you can do that by typing a question in the chat box, and I will monitor that for questions throughout, or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question. Our plan is to then do a second demo, but this time with a bit less talk. So this is just really so you can see the process more smoothly, and so that we have a part of this webinar that we can direct people to in the recording that's less broken up by discussion. And before I hand over to Gordon, I should say this process isn't live yet. There's a bit more work to do. And so any feedback today will be really useful. So hopefully that has all made sense. And I'm now going to hand over to Gordon, who's going to kick off with this first demo.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Anna. It's been a while since I've used GoToMeeting, and I'm just looking how to share my screen, and I need to ask the organizer, apparently.
I think Sam.
Yeah, I'll just do that. Go there.
I've just got to work out how to turn off my camera because I've forgotten. There we go.
I think that should give you access, Gordon.
Yeah, great. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. Right, so this is the new set of import routines that we've put together. Anna quite rightly said it's not released yet. It's pretty close. So we've got a few minor tweaks, and we'd quite like to react to any feedback we get from this webinar as well, but other than that, we're pretty well ready to go. So this isn't something that you're going to have to wait months to be able to use. We'd like to think it'll be out certainly within a week or so, but possibly sooner than that, depending on what feedback we get. The main driver has been to take some of the complexity out of importing and to make it easier for people who maybe don't use the CRS regularly or don't import files regularly. And in particular for those people who really just want to get stuff in as quickly as they can and get it published to Central. And there's another stream of work that's just about to start, which is taking that second step. So making it much easier to deal with Central records, both getting them in and getting duplicates out, and managing that in a much more streamlined way. So this is really the first part of that stream of work, and we hope that it's made life easier, and if not, then we really do want to hear how you think we could make it better. The way we've organized it is really around a set of consultations that we had with a group of interested people who I think were self-selecting. I can't remember how they were selected now, but I think they were, who gave lots of really good suggestions on how we could make this easier. This is the end point of that. It's essentially a wizard. If you think back to the 1970s, then it's kind of a wizard approach. So it's taking you through all of the steps that you need to go through in a quite detailed way, but trying to keep the screens as uncluttered as possible where we can, but making the ones that necessarily have to have a lot of stuff on it, making those more usable. So let's just work through a single import. Sam is going to interrupt quite a lot. That's the plan. So Sam I'm going to talk you through the nuts and bolts of what to click and how to do stuff, and Sam's going to fill, and Anna is going to fill in on the kind of detail that will be more useful to an information specialist at the methodological level, rather than just the click here, click there type stuff that I'm going to be doing. So this is the first screen that you get to, and you get to it in the same way as you would import anything else, by clicking on the Import tab at the top of the CRS. You won't see this in the live version at the moment. I'm on a test version, so a lot of the things that you'll see in here are test data. For example, all of these files are files that we've been loading in for testing. Actually thinking about it, I need to be in a different segment. So I'm just going to log out of this and log into a different segment, because we want to be in the ENT segment of this demo. That was nearly disastrous. Okay, so I'm now in the ENT segment. So the import you access through the Import tab. You can see that for the ENT segment, there's been no previous imports. So that's what you see if there's no previous imports. On the previous screen, you saw that I got a load of file names. That just gives you a list of files that you've imported and some overview stats on what came in from those files. You've got a graph at the bottom also that shows you the new and existing records that have been brought into the system or in the process of being brought into the system. So if you want to go to import, to the classic import, you can just click it, the classic import button there, and that'll take you through to the normal way of importing that's been in place in the CRS all the time. The guided import is this button here. So if we click on the guided import, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to tell it what file you want to load. We restrict it on this screen to the file types that you can see. So text files or RIS files, but I know that RIS files are text files, but often they have a .ris extension. There are some XML files that we're allowed to import. There's the CIW and the mbib files, and those are the ones that most people will be familiar with and most people will be using. There is a file size restriction of 20 megabytes. That's the same for the classic import as well. And if your file exceeds that, then you just need to split it into smaller chunks. And that's really because everything falls over if we try to upload and dedupe files that are absolutely huge. So the usual process is to either drag a file into the file upload box here, or you can just click it. And if you click it, it'll open up your file explorer, and you can choose a file in the normal way. I'm going to use this file, which is one that Sam's prepared. It's a CIW file, which I think is an EndNote library file.
Web of Science.
Web of, of course it is, yes.
Web of Knowledge, Web of Science, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just talk you through what happens when you load the file. What we tried to do is to identify the type of file this is, so that the system can pick the best filter for the records that are in it. And we do that in a couple of different ways. The first is that we look at the file name. So if you're following the convention that most people do of including the database name in the file name, then we'll recognize that and we'll choose an appropriate filter. So if your file name's got medline underscore 2021 0630, then we would know that that was a medline import and we choose the medline filter. There are a bunch of keywords that we look for in the file names, and they're things like Embase, Medline, Ahmed, Cinal, CT.gov, and a couple of others. And that gives it really the best chance of getting the right filter from the start. And that's, if you're not doing that already, that's a good working practice to follow. If we can't detect the filter from the file name, then the CRS looks at the content of the file and then tries to match the records that it detects in the file to the import filters that we have stored. So if your file is called anything, test.ris, and it's got all of the standard RIS file tags in it, then it's likely that we'll pick the right filter, or that the CRS will pick the right filter. But it doesn't get it right all the time. In this case, it hasn't got it right. And we know that because we can look down here at the analysis at the bottom. So the import file is this. The filter that it's chosen, so it's recognized that it's a Web of Science file. So it's the filter that it's chosen is the Web of Knowledge EndNote import filter. And it's recognized that from the content of the file, not by the file name, because we didn't include the file name in the import, although we might want to include WOS as a key going forwards. The thing to look at here is the analysis that's happened at the bottom of the screen. So the import filters found that there are 4 records in the file, which I know is right, but it's given a couple of warnings, or 3 warnings, just to highlight that there might be a problem. And it's told us here that there's 1 bibliographic field that has an unusually low count in your import file. So that's usually an indication that you've not got the right filters. In this case, it's saying that the pages field didn't detect any values in the import file. That might be correct. So it's only a warning.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only a warning. But it's if you're importing from a known source and you know that it always has pages, and this pops up and says there are no page fields, then you know that you've probably picked the wrong filter. The second warning tells you that there's 9 field tags that appear in your import file that are not included in the filter mapping, so in the import filter. And you can have a look at what they are. And what that's telling you is that within your import file, it's detected these tags, but they're not mapped to anything in the import filter. So we can't tell you anything more about those tags because they're not mapped to anything. So we don't know what they are. We just know that they exist in your file, but not in the import filter. And again, if you're doing this all the time, you're probably well aware that there's fields in the import file that you just don't care about and you're not going to bring into the CRS. So you can usually ignore that. It's just an indication of what might be a problem. And the last warning says that there are 6 field tags that appear in your selected import filter that were not found in the import file. So that's probably a little bit more worrying. So that's telling you that there are fields that you've mapped. So the filter's expecting these fields, but they don't appear in the file that you're trying to import. And again, that might be perfectly correct, but it is just a warning to say, are you sure that this is right? So in this case, because Sam's told me, it is in fact the wrong import filter.
Yeah.
So if you know it's the wrong, sorry, Sam, did you?
I'll just chip in, Gordon. Just the reason I know is because I would use by default the preferred import filter. There's a guide for this on the community site, and we'll put a link in the information section to that. So I will pop a link in that. It's not gone in yet, but it will go in there. That'll show you the preferred. Oh, it is in there.
Yeah.
That'll give you the preferred one. So that's just a quick sense check. So when you see this filter name, Web of Knowledge, Web of Science, Web of Knowledge, EndNote, you can go and quickly reference, is this the preferred one for Web of Science files? It's the last bit that's different, and actually that's the first thing I would do. So even before looking at that analysis, which is sometimes helpful for flagging issues, but often you may well not look at it, and I would just quickly check that and say, yeah, no, this is the wrong one. I'm going to use the preferred one, unless obviously you have a preferred one yourself. But we have a set of filters, exports and imports that we recommend, and those are there.
Yeah, sorry, Sam, you didn't know this was here because we only just put it in before the webinar, but yes, there is the link in there. I should say, by the way, for each of the pages, there's an information link here, which pops out some context help in the panel. If you went to this link, that's gonna go, yeah, so that's the link. And if you're not familiar with it, this just lists the preferred export styles and the import filters that you would want to use to get stuff out of the main databases and into the CRS. And now I've gone not full screen, so I just need to go back and go full screen again. Okay, so if we need to choose another filter, just click choose another filter. When you do that, it shows you a list of all the available filters. And in the same way that the classic import is structured, filters are structured, those filters are structured the same here. So the first thing you need to decide is which platform it came from, and you'll know that because you've exported the record yourself. So in this case, it's the Web of Knowledge. We know that it's come from that platform. That takes you to the specific database on that platform, and in this case, there's only the Web of Science. If you'd gone to NLM, for example, there might be others. Certainly if you went to Elsevier or EBSCO, there would be others. If you click Web of Science, that now says, okay, within that database on that platform, we've got 3 filters. Which is the one that it should be? And in this case, it's Web of Knowledge all databases, because that's the recommended filter. So you just click that, it'll go away and reanalyze the file. It'll tell you that there are still some warnings, but in this case, we don't need to worry about them because we know that that's the correct filter and we've got the correct records to import. Okay, so we've got as far as analyzing the file. It's probably taken 15 minutes to talk about that. When we do the full demo at the end, it'll take about 3 seconds. So it's really just going through it in detail to give you the background rather than it taking this long to do a real import.
And one of the things that we might add as an improvement here is, as well as the analysis, just an example record, so you can see whether it's going to look right at this point. So if you've got an example record of how it's going to look in CRS, you can probably quickly see, oh yeah, that looks wrong because I've lost all the sources, or the authors have come in the wrong format, or something like that. So that's something we're thinking of adding here that you may see in the final version.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, to move on, we continue, and what happens now is the file gets uploaded to the CRS. It still hasn't been imported, so it's still not in your segment. You can back out of this import at any point. It gives you up at the top here an overview of what it's found. So it's found four records in the file. None of them are duplicates at the moment because we haven't run a deduplication. And then at this top bit here, you can read it if you want. I'm not going to read through it, but it's basically just an explanation of what's happening. And down here is an explanation of what we're going to do with the deduplication. And the first thing that you would want to do is to run the classic deduplication. And that might be the only deduplication that you want to do. And Sam's going to talk about that in a while. So the classic deduplication is the one that the classic import would run, and it runs a whole bunch of different deduplication tests automatically and finds as many duplicates as it can and flags those up. So we'll run that now. Even though there are only 4 records in the import, it's deduping against a fairly large data set. So it can take a little while to dedupe the file. In general, it's not minutes, but it could be minutes. But it depends how much work it's got to do.
Sure. So one of the things we're thinking about is whether that should still run automatically in the same way as it does in the classic import. And if anybody here has a view on that, we'd be interested to see. I think it's highly recommended that you do. I think some of us think that maybe, you know, it should run automatically because we're trying to guide people to do the right thing. So that's a thing, and if people have got a view either way on that, a strong view, then please chip in.
Thanks, Sam. Again, you get a summary of what it's done. It tells you that they've still got those 4 records, and it says that we didn't find any duplicates of those 4 records using the standard dedupe. So what we then want to do is to go back and have a deeper look at whether there might be some duplicates that have not been picked up by the classic dedupe. So we go back to the dedupe screen, which is just by clicking run another dedupe. And here we can go down and pick one of the standard dedupe filters. So these are additional filters that we're going to run to see if there are any duplicates. So the first one that we might want to have a look at is the DOI. So you just choose the filter, and that's just going to look at the DOI and see if there's any matches on the DOI. So we'll just run that through and see what that finds. Okay, so what that's done is found one potential duplicate. And this is one of the screens where there's quite a lot of information on it, and we've simplified it as much as we can, but you really do need this information to be able to make decisions. And I'm just going to talk you through what the options are at this point. So in this example, we've only found one record that has a potential duplicate. So there's only two rows here. The original record that's in the CRS is the top one, the one in white, and the one in grey underneath it is the record that we're reading in that will be imported. If there were more, then they'd appear in this list underneath here. So if we start from the top, you've got 3 options here. The first is that if you're sure that all the records are not duplicates, then you can just deal with that in one click and click mark all as not duplicates, and they would all then be read into the system as new records. You would need to be sure that that was the case, and there are occasions where you can be sure. If it's found duplicates, unless there's a good reason not to, it's better to go through and actually look at them and deal with them. The second option is to keep all the existing records. So what we say there is essentially to throw away the duplicates, or to deal with the duplicate, or not to bring in the duplicates as new records. And the third option, which I'm not going to go into any details on, is to edit the global settings. When you import into the CRS, there's a bunch of global settings that determine what actions CRS takes if it's merging records together. And you set those, you can set them here, or you can set them in the classic import screen. I can go into some detail on that if anybody wants me to, but I was just going to leave that as it is because most people won't be changing those global settings. If you're going to deal with the records one by one, then this is the place that you would deal with them. The things that you can do here are either to say, keep this record. So what that means is that we won't do anything with this record, but we will indicate that this record has been brought in the import. So the number of records brought in will be correct, but what we're saying is that we're not going to change anything in the existing CRS record. We can say it's not a duplicate, which is a fairly straightforward one. So if it really isn't a duplicate, then you can just click not a dupe, and that will ignore the record and carry on and bring it in as new. Or the other thing that you might want to do is to say, well, this is a duplicate, but it's actually got fields that are better than the fields in the existing CRS record. And if, for example, the source should actually be allergy and not allergy 2021 May 16, you can just click on that field in the imported record, and then when you say update the CRS, it'll mark it as a duplicate, and it'll update the source field to be allergy instead of the existing allergy 2021. You can do that with any of those fields. That's pretty much it for that individual record. Sam, did you want me to mark it as not a dupe or to keep it, or
no? So just as a point of process, probably what I will do in most instances is eyeball the list. Are they all duplicates? And then keep all existing records, because I'm fairly happy with what exists in CRS. And for most of my processes, what I'm not trying to do is improve the records. I'm just trying to bring in new ones and identify new ones. Then the quickest thing to do, quickly eyeball, yeah, they're all dupes, keep all existing. Now, you may want to update your records and use this process to do that, but that's something depending on what the quality of the records are in that you've already got, and that's an individual decision. But for much of the processes, if you're bringing in searches for reviews, and there's a central record, you probably just want to keep the central record rather than messing around, making small changes to each of the individual record. Now, if you were improving your register, you may want to do something different. But what I will probably do more often than not is go, I'm happy with all those, they're all dupes, keep all existing, just to speed up this process and to stop bringing these duplicates in and having to merge them once I'm already in CRS. So this is clearly a duplicate. The format of the record's just a little bit dodgy on both counts, but it probably means it's not of any interest to my register or in central. It's just an old non-relevant record. And just on that point, when you keep, what you're doing is keeping all existing, and that is going into your folder. So all these decisions, whatever decision you make, you will have the set 4 records in your folder at the end, whether you chose to bring them in as new or whether you chose to update the CRS record or just keep the CRS record. Whatever those decisions, regardless, you will have 4 records in your folder at the end, so you haven't lost anything.
Thanks, Sam. I'll, in that case, click keep all records. It tells you what it's going to do and asks me to confirm, so I'll confirm. So now we come back to the summary tab here, and we can see that we've have our original 4 records. One has just been discarded after matching to an existing record. So it also confirms that the CRS record will be included in your import folder, which is just reinforcing what Sam's just said. So we haven't lost the record, it'll still be included in the import folder. And 3 don't match anything. So what we're going to do now, just by way of example, is to go back and run another deduplication. So what we see at the top here is that because we've dealt with one, we're not going to deal with that again. So that's been taken out of the pot of those 4 records to dedupe, and we're now just going to look at the remaining 3 records. So the second dedupe that we might want to try is title. So I'm sure notice when you hover over these in the right hand, I can't move the cursor because it'll disappear. When you hover over them, the description of what the filter does is in the right hand side. They're pretty obvious. It's basically the field that's going to be deduped and the number of characters within that field that'll be looked at. So we're going to look at title 100, and we're going to look at the deduplication again and see if we can find any dupes just on the first 100 characters of the title. Okay, so in this case, it has found 2 potential duplicates, and you can see that they're separated by a big black line. So this is the first potential duplicate, and again, there's quite a lot of fields that are different here. So it's got the same title, it's got different authors, different year, different date published. It's from the same source, it's got a different issue, and it's got a different DOI. So it's almost certainly a different record. So Sam, am I right in that?
Yeah, it's just the update to the review.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So
updating.
in this case, you would say it's not a dupe. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you click not a dupe, and that's taken that record out straight away, dealt with it, and it's just disappeared from the list. So the next one is that probably is a dupe by the looks of it. But the source record doesn't look particularly good, and the target record doesn't look particularly good either. So you would make whatever decision you need to make on that. I don't think it matters for this demo. I'll say it is a dupe. Okay, come back to here, and you can see that again we've dealt with that record. It's found 2 records have been discarded and 2 don't match anything. Just for the sake of completeness, we'll come back and say, okay, we've got 2 more to deal with. So what we might want to do is title, a kind of standard title, author, title and author rather. So that will be one of the standard ones that you might want to run. 35 characters in the title, 4 characters in the author, and see if that finds any other duplicates. Probably won't, because we've already dealt with the ones with the title.
Yeah. So just worth noting that list of filters, yours will look slightly different to mine. Those are so there's a list of standard ones that everybody sees, but any you've created yourself will also appear on that list. But hopefully you'll understand your list of filters.
Yeah. Well, good point, Sam. Yes, the list that you get shown is the standard filters plus any that you've created. So you won't see the filters that other people have created, which is slightly different to the classic import. So this time it has found 2 duplicates, and that's because we were looking at 35 characters in the title rather than 100 characters in the title. Again, you would deal with them in whatever way you needed to deal with them. So I'm going to say it is not a dupe. It takes us back to the summary screen, and at that point, I think I'm happy with everything that's happened. So I would continue to the import, click import.
Just before you move on, Gordon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of text here. We're not convinced that this description quite helps people as much as we'd hoped it would. It's gone through many iterations. So again, this is a screen that might change slightly. We're just trying to get to a set of wording here for this summary that really helps people understand what's happened without causing too much confusion, because that's the whole point of this. So like I said, there may just be small changes to this text. We're still really trying to hone this to make it more as understandable as we can without losing too much information.
Yeah, so continue with the import. It gives you a final summary of what you've got and says, are you sure you want to import them? And then it goes away and imports them. And it'll give you a running count of how those records are going into the system. And the final screen just needs a couple of words of explanation. It tells you what you've done. You've got the option to go to the folder that those records were imported into, and I'll do that in a second. You've got the option to import another file, so that's basically just takes you back to the start of the import process. And we've got these 2 in for the demo, although they won't be appearing on the live version just yet. They'll be to take you straight to things within the CRS that you might want to do. And one of those things is you might want to set up that folder of imported records as a Screen for Me project, because that would be one route that you will be taking through. You might want to set them up as a triage project within the CRS. I know a lot of people are using that functionality, and you may well want to process them ready to go into Central, so that will be another option. So the intention here is that there'll be a set of options that you can go to, which will be the same kind of process that we've just looked at. So the kind of wizardy process that'll guide you through the different steps that you need to go through to get stuff done as quickly as possible. So for the final version, there'll just be this one and this one. If we just finish this off by going to the folder, you can see that we've gone to the folder. It's uploaded all 4 of those records. If we look at the subfolders, you can see it was those 4 records are split into 2 that were existing and 2 that are new. And I think at that point, I have finished the demo. So Sam, I don't know if you want to add anything, or Anna at this point.
The only thing I was just going to flag was a question from Anne, which Dave has helpfully answered in the chat anyway, but I'll just raise it because I think it's a good one, around knowing what matches are made on the classic dedupe might help inform which of the additional filters you might want to then try. And so Dave has come back and is going to sort of share that information with Anne, but also probably put that information into the pop-out help panel, as I think it would be really useful.
Yeah.
And so does anybody else have any further questions? We had a quick question about how this interacts with the sort of screen for me process, and we sort of described that a bit, that, you know, essentially you do this process, there's options to do it, you know, in quite an in-depth way, as Gordon has just shown, or there are other ways you can sort of bypass some of those more in-depth processes to make it a bit quicker, which you might want to do depending on the use case. And as you know, Sam has described some of the ways in which she'll be doing that, such as just sort of eyeballing and knowing that, you know, the format of her records that already exist in the CRS are in a state that she's happy with, so she knows she'll take the CRS version of those duplicates. I think if there aren't any other questions at this point, and given the time,
yeah,
if you don't mind, Gordon, I know it's a lot on you now, but there'll be sort of, yeah, less interruption.
yeah. I'm going to import a file that I haven't seen before, so this is not one I prepared earlier. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that Sam does know what's going to happen. So
excitement levels high.
Yeah. Okay, so just to point out, so now we have imported a file. We can see that we've got a summary of it here, and if you click on that, it will take you to the import folder of that file. So you can go back and see the different files that were imported over time. Okay, so we're going to go to the, this is the quick run through then. We're going to go to the import, guided import. I'm going to choose a different file this time. That's my local machine being very slow. So I'm going to choose a Medline file this time. It's uploading the file, and this time it's got it right, I think, Sam. It's detected that we've got Medline in the import file. It's said, okay, the standard import filter for a Medline file is obviously Medline Medlars. And so we don't need to choose another filter. We could look at the import, the warnings, but given that Sam's already looked at it and is happy with it, and you probably would be as well once you run through it once or twice, we'll just continue. So we continue with that file. It's going to look at what's in the file in terms of duplicates. It's found one internal duplicate, and it was an exact duplicate, so it's discarded it. So that's a different step to the one we had in the previous file, in the previous import. If there are exact duplicates, they do not get imported because there's no point. So they're exact duplicates. That leaves us 53 to deal with. So we're going to run a classic deduplication on that. And I kind of agree with Sam's suggestion that, you know, if you're always going to do a classic deduplication, then it could be automatic. The reason it's not is because you do have the option to bring all of the records in as new records. So to not do a deduplication because you want to bring them in for a specific purpose. Whether that's a useful function in day-to-day information specialist work, I'm not sure. But it is a function that's sometimes quite useful if you want to bring records in just to do something with them and then export them out again, rather than to put them into your register. So that's something to consider on whether that's worthwhile or not. Okay, so we found the duplicates. I'll take Sam's approach of eyeballing these and seeing if they're if I need to do anything with them, and I'll assume that I don't. So in that case, I'll say keep all existing records, which it's going to do. It gives me a summary of what's going to happen here. So we've got 54 records, 6 have been discarded after matching an existing record. So there was 6 that we just dealt with there. 28 records are an exact match to CRS records and will be included in the import folder. So if it's an exact match to a CRS record, then we know that it's a duplicate, so we can just flag that without having to do anything with it. 1 record exists in the CRS that we imported as new into the group segment, and 18 don't match any records. So we might want to run a different deduplication on that. So we could just, if we wanted to, we could again go back and maybe run the DOI dedupe on that and see if we can find any more records. So that's just going to run the DOI deduplication on those 18 outstanding records. Okay, so it's not found any duplicates on the DOI. Might want to just have 2, just because we did it on the previous one. Let's just look at the title 100, see if that finds any duplicates. Okay, it has found duplicates. So again, I will be eyeballing these and see if I need to do anything with them. Assume that I don't, get rid of them, keep all the existing records, and then we could go on and do the title and author search as well. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click import. It tells me what it's going to do. I'm going to say yes, and it's going to import those 53, not 54, because we deleted one of them was an exact duplicate. So the final screen shows me what it's done. This is the summary of what's been imported, and I can go to the folder and eyeball those records. And I know it seemed like an eternity, but that I think was about 3 minutes to import all of those records. And we can see here in the Medline that there were 36 existing records and 17 new records. And I think that's the end of the second demonstration.
Yeah, so that does goes to show that it's actually very quick. We took sort of, I think, 40 minutes with the first demo, and as you say, 3 minutes with the second, and you still did some additional deduping as well with that. So I think that is quite indicative that it can be quite a slick process. Obviously, you know, first couple of times you do it, you probably will want to check those analysis reports and things like that. But on subsequent imports, you know, you'll probably have a very slick route through the process. I'm not seeing any further questions at this point. Does anyone want to sort of come off mute or anything? Do feel free to chip in with any thoughts. Particularly perhaps any thoughts around whether we make the classic dedupe automatic or keep it as an option. I think I'm slightly coming down on the side of keeping it as an option, but making it clearer than it currently is, that
a much bigger button. Yeah,
we really recommend that you do this. It's really just for those use cases that you described where, you know, you've got to go quite quickly perhaps on something for a particular use case and you want to bring everything in as new. I would say generally that's not advisable, but I can understand that sometimes that is what people will want to do. So I think having that as an option is important.
Yeah, I think the reason I flagged it was because the first time I ran through this, the first version, I missed it. And I didn't do it.
I didn't know quite what it meant. So, the word classic was in my mind. I thought, oh, it's asking if I actually want to go down the classic import route, and I hadn't quite. So I think you're right. I think if we make it more prominent, that will probably be sufficient.
There is a
if there are,
caveat to say that you can at point if you run the classic dedupe still just import everything as new, even if it does.
yeah, true. Yeah, that is a good point. Well, I think if there are no further questions or anything, or if anything occurs to you after this webinar, then obviously do get in touch. As Gordon said, this isn't live yet. We've got a few bits and pieces to finish off. But yeah, do get in touch if you have any questions or queries or suggestions. That would be great to hear from you. And other than that, I think we'll draw this to a close if I can remember how to do that. There seems to be a big red X down here. So yep, thank you very much, everybody. And goodbye for now.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Cheers. Bye.